Hello everyone, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. I wish you all an enjoyable listening experience. Today, I'm going to discuss a book with you, What Doesn't Kill Us, subtitled The New Psychology of Posttraumatic Growth. This is a book that teaches you how to bounce back in adversity and find hope for growth after trauma. Few people have not experienced the taste of trauma, whether it's campus violence, betrayal by friends, the loss of loved ones, a broken marriage, illness, accidents, and so on. All of these can leave deep wounds in our hearts. This is what we call trauma. The occurrence of trauma is unpredictable and uncontrollable. Sometimes it can plunge the survivor into immense and lasting pain. Trauma can ruin a person's life, but it can also be an opportunity for a phoenix-like rebirth. People can search for the meaning of life in suffering, rebuild their inner world after trauma, and lead a more meaningful life. This is the concept that Dr. Stephen Joseph, the author of this book, wants to convey. Dr. Joseph is a professor at the University of Nottingham, specializing in psychology, health, and social care. In this book, he closely integrates a wealth of real-life cases with cutting-edge psychological research, introducing us to a new science called trauma psychology. This book is not only essential reading for psychologists but also a practical guide for ordinary people. Whether you are personally struggling with stress and trauma or someone you love is suffering from trauma, you can find inspiration in this book. I will now explore 3 questions to help you understand this book better. 1. What impact does trauma have on our lives? 2. What allows us to recover and grow from trauma? 3. How can we ultimately move from trauma towards personal growth? First, let's take a look at the first question. What impact does trauma have on our lives? Trauma refers to physical injuries that result in wounds. When certain hurtful events tear through the protective layers of our mental world, they leave psychological wounds. This is what we mean by trauma in psychology. Traumatic events can devastate a person, but some individuals, after experiencing such events, gain a whole new understanding of the meaning of life and their own existence. This is what the author calls post-traumatic growth. On March 6, 1987, a large cruise ship named the Herald of Freedom set sail from Belgium to England. During the journey, it encountered a maritime disaster and, in just 45 seconds, the ship was completely submerged. A total of 193 people lost their lives in this tragic accident. The survivors experienced a living hell, losing their beloved friends and family. Some of the survivors endured significant psychological stress for an extended period. They were often diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, a term you may be familiar with, as it frequently appears in news reports and works of fiction. People with post-traumatic stress disorder often have nightmares involuntarily, experience flashbacks or hallucinations, recalling terrifying experiences. They tend to avoid anything that could trigger these memories and feel isolated and disconnected. It becomes challenging for them to experience happiness, love, and intimacy as they did before. They often become irritable, suffer from insomnia, and are easily startled. Post-traumatic stress disorder can persist for years or even decades, and for some individuals, it can disrupt their entire lives. However, there are also survivors who, because of their trauma, experience growth. Researchers revisited survivors of the Herald of Freedom maritime disaster 3 years later and made an uplifting discovery. Astonishingly, 43% of them believed that their perspective on life had become more positive after experiencing the maritime disaster. In their own words, "I now value my relationships with myself and others more. I no longer take everything I have for granted. I make the most of every day. I understand human nature better and am more tolerant of others. I have a deeper understanding of life. I am more determined to succeed." Researchers conducted similar studies with survivors of other tragic events and found that despite leaving deep trauma, many individuals experienced positive changes in their attitudes toward life. Many started pursuing dreams they had abandoned or forgotten, such as pursuing their dream jobs or continuing their education. Many trauma survivors also underwent a shift in their values. For instance, Kevin experienced a sudden heart attack, which made him realize the true value of life. He used to worry about trivial matters, but now he just wants to make every day meaningful. For many survivors of trauma, the small joys in everyday life became more important than wealth or fame. Trauma also had a significant impact on relationships, especially intimate ones. After Kevin's recovery, he no longer took his wife's efforts in their marriage for granted and spent more time with her. Many trauma survivors placed greater emphasis on family and friendship than they did before the traumatic event, and their empathy greatly increased. So, how do these positive changes occur? This brings us to the second question. What allows us to recover and grow from trauma? When individuals experience a trauma, they often endure significant psychological stress. This stress can shatter their inherent beliefs and perceptions about the world, forcing them to view life through a completely new lens. We construct what we call the assumed world, which is a projection of the real world in our minds. This world begins forming in our childhood. For instance, we assume that being well-behaved will bring rewards, while misbehavior leads to punishment. Initially, we assume the world is friendly to us, underestimate the likelihood of misfortune, believe that everything is controllable and predictable, and tend to be overly optimistic about our own character, thinking we are honest and noble. These ingrained assumptions act like scaffolding for building our lives, providing us with a framework for living comfortably. However, trauma can suddenly knock down this scaffolding, exposing us to the harsh reality that life is fragile, death can strike at any moment, and unfairness is a frequent occurrence. In the face of such contradictions between the new information trauma brings and our existing assumptions, we may find ourselves in a state of confusion, forced to reevaluate and redefine our identity. At this point, people may go through two cognitive processes, assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation involves trying to fit the new knowledge from the trauma into our existing cognitive framework. Accommodation, on the other hand, is about modifying our existing assumptions to adapt to the new information. Our original assumed world is like a precious vase that has been shattered. With assimilation, we attempt to piece it back together, but the cracks remain visible. Some people, while grieving the broken vase, realize that it can never return to its original form. Instead, they may use the shards to create a mosaic, showcasing the vase's new value in a unique and meaningful way. This is the essence of accommodation. New travelers have discovered that in the face of trauma, we tend to instinctively choose assimilation because it provides an illusion that the world is still controllable and predictable, making us feel temporarily better. However, this approach can also make trauma survivors more psychologically fragile, defensive, and prone to harm. The reassembled vase might seem restored, but even a slight tremor can shatter it again. Accommodation, on the other hand, involves modifying our assumed world based on new truths. We must understand that bad things can happen to good people, life is uncertain and fragile, and trauma survivors need to view their lives from a new perspective and reconsider their traumatic experiences. It is only through the process of accommodation that individuals can grow after trauma and seek new meaning, creating new values in the face of adversity. However, if accommodation goes to extremes and completely discards the existing assumed world, it can also lack adaptability. For instance, some people who have experienced accidents and injuries may begin to feel that nowhere on earth is safe. This can introduce new challenges to their lives. Therefore, we need to strike a balance between assimilation and accommodation that suits us best, allowing the reconstructed assumed world to align more closely with the real world. The key to rebuilding one's inner world lies in accommodation. While the concept is simple, why is it that only some individuals can use accommodation to rebuild a grander and sturdier new world after trauma? This is because possessing a cognitive framework for accommodation requires three essential factors, the three basic psychological needs of humans. These needs are 1. Autonomy needs, the need for every individual to make choices and decisions based on their own volition. 2. Belongingness needs, the need for interpersonal relationships characterized by love, safety, and a sense of belonging to other individuals and groups, providing a sense of security. 3. Competence needs, the need for individuals to feel useful in social life, to have the ability to exercise and demonstrate their talents. In a study, psychologists asked individuals who had been abused during childhood about the turning points that helped them cope with their traumatic past. Most answers had several common elements, such as being genuinely accepted or accepting themselves, feeling loved and cared for, developing a sense of belonging and establishing intimate connections with others. It was through these experiences that their autonomy and belongingness needs were met, initiating the process of psychological growth once again. One man said, "I used to be very lonely, building a 10-foot wall around myself, making it impossible for anyone to get close, let alone hurt me. One day, I told my friend about the abuse I suffered in childhood, thinking he would distance himself from me. But he didn't. He accepted everything about me. Because of him, I finally learned to trust and love again. Another person talked about how they reactivated their competence needs by achieving a sense of accomplishment and control. For example, Susan achieved the highest score in a math test and said, "I went back to school to earn a basic high school certificate in math. It was my way of rebelling against my abusive parents, ex-husband, and other people who mistreated me. Now I feel like I've won a victory, and there's no more humiliation or bullying that can affect me." Like Susan, many trauma survivors, given the opportunity to showcase their talents or receive recognition, begin to feel capable of protecting themselves and starting a new life. So now that we understand the power of recovery from trauma, what can we do after trauma to help ourselves heal as quickly as possible and ultimately move towards personal growth? This is the third question we want to address: healing from trauma and moving towards rebirth. In this process, you have the option to seek help or embark on self-help. Seeking help primarily involves seeking professional assistance from a psychologist or therapist. There are various psychological therapies available to help individuals effectively cope with post-traumatic stress disorders. However, beyond this, we can also choose self-help, which might be the first choice for most people. This book provides a highly detailed self-help guide for individuals who have experienced trauma, called the Thrive Model. It consists of 6 steps. Before beginning to use this guide, you must adhere to one principle: the pace of recovery must be under your control. If you feel physically uncomfortable, experienced emotional fluctuations, intense emotions, or even panic during any exercises, please stop immediately and resume when you have calmed down. Now, let's dissect the Thrive Model step by step. Step 1: Self-assessment. Why start with this step? After experiencing trauma or adversity, you might remain under elevated psychological stress for an extended period, feeling emotionally overwhelmed, unable to control your feelings, or experiencing numbness, anxiety, and exhaustion. Many people attempt to continue living as they did before, but they often find themselves depleted of energy and only able to handle the most urgent tasks. This leaves no room for other experiences, let alone taking care of their own feelings. The downside of this approach is that it overlooks the most crucial part of trauma recovery: your own state. Therefore, this step redirects your attention to yourself, assessing and organizing your mental and emotional state. You will start by checking your personal safety, including ensuring that you are not putting yourself at risk intentionally or unintentionally. Ensure you have access to medical, psychological, and legal assistance when needed, maintain proper nutrition, and get adequate sleep. Next, you will examine your psychological safety, understanding what triggers your emotions and helping yourself understand and control them. You'll also assess your connections with others, taking time to reach out to family and friends, among other things. In summary, during this stage, your focus is on your physical and mental well-being, assessing and understanding your emotional state. Step 2: Cultivate hope. After conducting a comprehensive assessment of your state, the next step is to further adjust your mental state. Research shows that many people who remain in prolonged suffering after wounds have difficulty extricating themselves due to excessive self-blame and guilt. Over half of disaster survivors feel guilty for surviving when others did not, while more than 2/3 reproach themselves for their inaction during the disaster. To emerge from wounds starting now, you must shift your thought patterns. You need to transition from self-blame to self-reflection and from remorse for the past to hope for the future. Hope comes from 3 modes of thinking: goal setting, motivational thinking, and pathway thinking. Firstly, you set goals for yourself, big or small. Big goals, such as earning a college degree or changing careers, or smaller goals, like getting your car inspected or doing laundry, all bring hope because they focus your attention on what lies ahead. Secondly, you develop the motivation to move towards those goals by inspiring yourself to work towards them. Finally, you use thinking to find methods or pathways to achieve your goals. This involves anticipating difficulties and obstacles, seeking corresponding strategies, and making informed choices. So, how can you train hope? Start by breaking down long-term goals into smaller ones, focusing only on the next step at a time. Maintain a positive attitude and self-motivation by telling yourself, "I can do this." In a practical example, during driving lessons, many people consciously talk to themselves, checking the rearview mirror, starting the car, and rechecking the mirror. This has proven to be effective. If you want to explore your hopes further, spend 10 minutes jotting down how you pursued your goals in the past, what motivated you, and what strategies you used. Repeating this exercise will make you realize that you have always possessed the resources necessary to overcome obstacles. Hope connects our present and future. In that brighter future, we have already overcome adversity. With hope, you have the motivation to complete the next step. Step 3. Tell a new story. Telling a new story means re-evaluating your relationship with trauma. The way we describe ourselves influences our feelings. Being a victim represents passivity, failure, and helplessness, whereas being a survivor signifies emerging from adversity and restarting life. The term thriver goes even further, signifying positivity, control, and hope. To become a thriver, we need to tell a new story that transforms us from victims into growth-oriented individuals. So, how do you go about telling a new story? The first method is to use metaphors wisely because people are accustomed to thinking metaphorically. The right metaphors can help you see things from a fresh perspective and find new solutions. For instance, individuals who have experienced trauma often say things like, "I feel like a bird locked in a cage," or "I seem lost in a dark forest." These incorrect metaphors often confine us. However, with a bit more imagination, we can liberate ourselves. The correct metaphor is that even within a cage, there is a door to open, and if the dark forest can cause us to lose our way, we can wait for the sun to rise and find our direction. Sarah, a trauma survivor who grew up in a hilly area prone to forest fires, found a metaphor that helped her grow from her life experiences. She used to view forest fires as destructive disasters, but later, she realized that they also bring renewal by clearing away deadwood, supporting animal habitats, and restoring ecological balance. New life emerges from the ashes of destruction. Trauma can also trigger growth, understanding, and newfound strength. During the process of struggling with hidden obstacles after trauma and striving to find meaning and power, we become like new animals and plants reborn from the forest fire. The second way to tell a new story is through expressive writing. All you need is a blank piece of paper. On this paper, write down the things that trouble you from different perspectives, perhaps describing everything that has happened to you from someone else's point of view. You can also write an unsent letter or create an assimilation story. Write continuously for 10 minutes without stopping, letting your thoughts flow. Regardless of what you come up with, stop after 10 minutes. Repeat this process every day for 7 days. With the help of your imagination, try to view the issue from different angles. It's essential to note that in your writing, you should use positive words twice as often as negative ones for maximum effectiveness. Also, use words that express cause and effect and delve deeper into your thoughts. Words expressing cause and effect include because, reason, due to, impact, and so on. Words related to deep thinking include meaning, understand, consider, purpose, and more. This is crucial because, in general, people are accustomed to narrating but not used to finding causes. Using these cause and effect words can help us think more about the reasons behind our experiences. Once you figure it out, you will discover that everything has both advantages and disadvantages. Learning to face suffering with a positive attitude can lead to growth. For example, if you are writing a fairy tale, there could be a princess and a prince, as well as an evil witch or wizard. In this story, you can use dramatic cause and effect elements. You might write about how the prince faced an endless array of tricks from the witch but never gave up on rescuing the princess because he knew that in this world, nothing comes easy without effort and going through setbacks. Expressions like these will help you think about the meaning of your difficult experiences. When we start retelling the story of our lives, change begins to happen. Next, we can move on to the fourth step, discovering change and personal transformation. Changes within oneself can often be overlooked, especially when dealing with wounds. Therefore, we need to discover these changes through reflective exercises. At the end of each day, take 10 minutes to review your day and record the small positive moments. Remember that even seemingly insignificant events have their value. For example, someone might write, "Today, I noticed the laughter of children, and it made me very happy. In the past, I would have taken it for granted." Another person might write, "I went shopping today, which is a significant achievement for me. I'm proud of myself." Record the moments when you felt your best and why you felt that way. Note down the coping strategies that have been most helpful for you. This will accelerate your growth. Remember to only record positive experiences. Initially, you might struggle to find things to write about, but keep at it daily. After a few weeks, you'll notice that you've documented more and more positive experiences. Read these experiences every night, and you'll realize that you're on the path to recovery. Moving on to the fifth step, we'll assess the meaning and thoughts these changes bring to our lives. What has life taught us? What are our goals? What do we value in life? The changes brought about by transformation can help us reconsider these questions, altering our thought processes and goals, leading us to discover new values. So, how can you determine your current goals and values? The author suggests a hypothetical epitaph exercise. Imagine if you were to pass away tomorrow, what would be written on your tombstone? What words would you want to see there? If you're unhappy with what you imagine, write down what you would like to be engraved on your tombstone. This exercise can help you identify what matters most to you, understand the meaning of life, and rediscover your life's purpose. In the sixth step, we put our psychological growth into action. Dedicate some time each week to review the past week's events and see what concrete actions prove that you've begun to grow. For example, someone might write, "I spoke up at yesterday's work meeting, even though I knew some might disagree. I stuck to my point of view, which I wouldn't have done in the past." Another person might say, "On Sunday, I prepared a special dinner for my husband to express my love. It was a big step for me." Some may even summon the courage to sign up for evening classes and start learning to paint from scratch. No matter how trivial these actions may seem, they demonstrate that you are more self-accepting, self-reliant, goal-oriented, and value personal growth more than before. By summarizing the events of the past week through this exercise, you can also plan your actions for the upcoming week. For instance, you may decide to spend time donating to children with heart disease and give a craft lecture at your child's school. In essence, through creative and fulfilling actions, you'll gradually awaken from the pain of trauma, and a beautiful new world will emerge from what used to be the barren ruins of your soul. Viktor Frankl, one of the most significant psychologists of the 20th century and a Holocaust survivor, said that even in the most challenging circumstances, individuals can decide who they want to become, whether in their minds or souls. Soul freedom is something no one can take away. It brings purpose and meaning to life. So, remember, even if you've fallen into boundless darkness before, you can eventually find the light. The hurt you've experienced will only make you braver and stronger. It cannot kill your strength. With this interpretation, we conclude our journey through this book. Congratulations on completing another book, and thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom with practice to achieve our financial goals and create a better future. Thank you all, and goodbye.